After visiting 55 zoos, aquariums, theme parks, and more, I decided to finally put together the ultimate list of my top 100 favorite zoo exhibits. And this is only part 1. Before we jump right into things like a bunch of wild animals, I want to cover a couple of rules so I don't get yelled at in the comments. This isn't a list of the best exhibits I've ever seen. These are my favorites. While my usual guidelines were considered, in the end they really all came down to personal preference. And I basically asked myself, which one of these would I rather see today? To make things even more interesting, I created a special version for channel members. If you become a member, you will soon be able to vote on what video should come next, and get access to bonus content. In this case, an extended version of this list that includes personal criticisms for most of these selections. So, with that covered, let's get started with number 100. World of the Insect at the Cincinnati Zoo. My hometown. The Insect House has been scaring visitors since 1978, and it's been a pleasure to watch that for as long as I can remember. But that's not why it's on the list. If you ask any American zoo enthusiast, what's the best insectarium in the country, at least in a zoo, there's no debate, no hesitation. There's like a 99% chance they're going to say it's in Cincinnati. In fact, you could argue that it's objectively the best exhibit in the entire zoo. It's the only one of their older attractions that has never aged poorly. You could spend probably hours reading the graphics. Nearly every species is one that I'm pretty sure most of you have never heard before. And the leafcutter ant display stretches into 2 separate rooms. And they can even go on the ceiling. So even within that short amount of time, maybe you can see why this is considered the best. Number 99. The Osher Rainforest at the California Academy of Sciences. Due to the circumstances that the footage I have of this place doesn't live up to my standard, I had to postpone the museum's in-depth spotlight on my channel. So this list is my way of still being able to show it to you. You know, I feel like for as good as this feature is, it doesn't get talked about nearly enough. In fact, when I went to zoochat.com to see what people thought of it, people criticized that it looked like a mall. And no, if you're one of those people, I'm sorry, you're crazy for thinking that. This is an incredible 90-foot tall, 4-leveled tropical domed rainforest that immerses you in a lush, hot, and vibrant ecosystem. It's a perfect place to witness biodiversity in action, teeming with over 1,600 individual animals, like birds, hordes of invertebrates, reptiles, and while I won't count them as living animals, for 1 second I was convinced that the bats in this cave were real. Why was I convinced? Because I heard scream after scream before I walked in. The only way out of this dome is through an elevator that's at the top level, but it doesn't take you back into the museum's main lobby. Rather, under the dome and under the Amazon flooded forest that makes up the bottom part of the Osher Rainforest. Number 98. Wolf Wilderness at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. Now this exhibit is just one of several sections in the much larger Wilderness Trek region, dedicated to animals that can tolerate the cold. While most of it is actually brand new, some of its older stuff is still around and not looking too good. But the Wolf Wilderness opened in 1997, and purely based on its quality, in my eyes, it could pass as a brand new attraction. Showing you these clips and photos really doesn't do it justice. You have to be here to fully understand the creative dynamics of where everything is. But I'll do my best. It starts you off in an old but well-detailed and well-lived-in hunting cabin. Then you'll step foot outside onto a single path that's under a shelter. On your immediate right is a long stream, which is the only thing separating you from a bald eagle, pheasants, and other waterfowl. On your left is a beaver pond that not only lets you look into their den, but you can see them come and go from this to their pond. And all that space behind them is patrolled by Mexican wolves, who honestly could hunt the beavers if they were brave enough to take on these waters. Number 97. Wings of the World at the Cincinnati Zoo. You'll eventually come to find on this list that while I don't think this is the best birdhouse I've ever seen, I also don't think it gets enough attention that it deserves. Every display is completely distinct compared to the next, and they're either styled to a continent like South America and Australia, or an ecosystem like the Savannah and polar waters. But it also has this charisma that no other birdhouse has, and it's hard to explain. And that's primarily thanks to the wall of Charlie Harper-inspired artwork, the small statues that chatter when you touch it, and the actual chattering cockatoo that's perched right outside the building. Plus, you gotta love penguins, and it's one of the few places in the world that features not one, but 2 species of puffins. Number 96. The Secret Reef at the Tennessee Aquarium. I'm willing to bet some of you guys thought I forgot about this place, didn't ya? There are a lot of impressive things about this highly, severely, sorely underrated aquarium, but whenever my mind goes back to it, I always think of the Secret Reef and its undersea caverns. This tank was modeled after the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary in the Gulf of Mexico. These 600,000 gallons make up the largest feature in the aquarium. You know, it sounds like something we've all seen before, but this is a little different. The main path actually passes the reef several different times, but you're never actually given a large view of the entire tank. It just kind of teases you the entire time, especially when you get to the basement. Now, what do most large shark tanks have? A walk-through tunnel. Well, this tank has one of those too. But the undersea caverns places you under the secret reef from the perspective of a diver exploring a rocky cave. And that is why it is on this list. Number 95. Expedition Peru at the Nashville Zoo. First of all, love the name. They could have chosen something completely vague. But no, they wanted to dedicate this to a specific country. With only $10 million, they definitely nailed it. I know it's weird to say only $10 million, but that honestly doesn't get zoos very far these days. The designers perfectly blended Peru's wildlife with the culture and created a peaceful balance. You really can't go wrong with a pan flute-infused soundtrack. Expedition Peru helped kick off this slow-growing revolution to turn the Nashville Zoo into an underrated zoo, and even maybe one day the best zoo in the country. There's Pudu, the nation's greatest enclosure for spectacled bears, tamarin monkeys in the women's restroom, filmed by my fiance, by the way. And though I honestly don't really care to see pets or domestic animals on my zoo visit, the guinea pig village is one of my favorite stops in the entire zoo. Number 94. The Small Mammal and Reptile House at the Lincoln Park Zoo. Wow, talk about variety. Over 200 animals. But it's not just the animals themselves that put it on this list, but also for the diversity of their exhibits. Detailed terrariums big and small, a nocturnal corner, bat cave, and the mongooses look like they could dig their way into the snake habitat that's right underneath them. But what makes this really memorable is the Rainforest atrium that's under a 45-foot high glass dome. Now, it's been a minute since I've been here, so please forgive me if I show animals that are no longer here, but I recall loving the simulated stream, created by several side-by-side enclosures, where you'll find species in the trees and in the water below, until the stream descends into a ground-level pond. I know technically I have featured this on the channel before years ago, but I think it might be time to present a more updated version once again. Number 93. The Grizzly Ridge at the Akron Zoo. For being such a small place, don't Google how big it is now, a lot of it is underdeveloped. I gotta give the zoo credit for keeping things interesting. Grizzly Ridge opened in 2013, and it's one of those exhibits that will look brand new for years to come. 4 acres that puts you in the North American wilderness. And it all starts off with rescued bald eagles, along with a 45-foot tall aviary, housing birds that could be found in your backyard. And as you move up the hill, you'll encounter rescued brown bears, who always seem to be active and up to something. There's little screech owls, coyotes, red wolves, which many of you know is very endangered. In my opinion, the attraction's hook is the otter slide, a fully enclosed acrylic tube that takes you right through the deep river otter pool, offering an up-close view that you will never forget. Number 92. Habitat Africa at the Brookfield Zoo. Both the savannah and the forest. This is a very rare case where you'll find that the indoor parts are way more immersive and interesting than the outdoor parts. On the savannah, there's a few good-sized yards for hoofstock, but the inside is themed after a copy where animals can go to hide on and inside the rock. This walk-through aviary features walk-through fractures in the rock that are home to reptiles and dwarf mongooses, and another one offers a close encounter with painted dogs, and you can even get up close to the giraffes if they're inside. Last I saw though, the Klipspringer was no longer exhibited here full-time and does have outdoor access. The forest, or the hidden gems of the forest, takes you out from under the sun and into the tropics. On the outside, you might run into okapis, red river hogs, and 2 species of duikers. But again, I feel far more immersed inside, as the dense foliage camouflages dwarf crocodiles, more duikers, more okapis, and the incredibly rare white-bellied pangolin. Number 91. The Living Coast at the Brookfield Zoo. One of my favorite zoo aquariums that I've been to, and also one of the few that have the honor of being on this list. The Living Coast pays homage to the tiny inhabitants of the coral reef, freshwaters of Illinois, the open ocean, and the Pacific coastal kelp forests. I won't lie, and I'm sure others can agree, the Living Coast isn't too memorable until you get to the last room. You'll stop in your tracks if you're not ready for the rush of water that falls from the ceiling. And then you'll stop in your tracks again when you reach the dome. The very loud dome filled with flying birds that nest along the walls. And then if you look down at the base of the cliff, there's a penguin oasis. Even though there's no underwater viewing, you can still get super close to these birds to create some sort of connection. Especially if one of the free-flying ones poop on you. Number 90. Key West at SeaWorld Orlando. A vibrant section that reflects the charm of Florida's southernmost point. It's the place if you want to get really close to some rescued pelicans. And so far, this is the best stingray touch tank I've ever come across. You can feed them, there's a separate part for their babies, and it's even where Baby Jaws temporarily lived in Jaws 3D. Everyone's favorite part is one of the most natural-looking man-made dolphin lagoons you'll ever see. The colors, the rockwork, the machine-made waves, and the sandy bottom definitely make this look like one of the best of its kind. Number 89. The Penguin and Puffin Coast at the St. Louis Zoo. This penguin complex is an indoor and outdoor attraction, but you might have to wait in line just to get in. Some might see that as a bad thing, but I see it as a blessing because while you're waiting to get in, you can stand right next to more penguins. Even if the Humboldt penguins weren't outside, this is definitely still worth the wait. This was the first open-air penguin habitat in North America. You can feel the same chilling air that they feel, and if you're lucky, even the same water. And if you didn't notice, there's penguins everywhere, on your left and on your right, and they look like they're ready to jump over those barriers at any moment. The next room takes you from the bottom of the world to the top, surrounding you with puffins, basically the free-flying versions of penguins, as some might say. I got to experience the Penguin and Puffin Coast for the first time in, I think, 2012. I've seen a lot of penguin palaces since then, but still haven't seen anything like this. Number 88. Into the Deep at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Showcasing a realm that's out of our sight, but is still teeming with life. This exhibit's innovative designs replicates the extreme conditions of the deep sea, allowing rarely seen animals to thrive. In fact, Monterey was one of the first places to successfully display a lot of these creatures. If I had to describe the experience in a few sentences, I would say it's like walking through some fantasy version of space, because not only is it almost pitch black, but you'll question reality and have a tough time convincing yourself that you are in fact looking at an actual living organism. Number 87. Madagascar at the Bronx Zoo. I've said it before. I'll say it again, and I'll say it 100 more times. No one does the little details like the Bronx Zoo does. Doesn't matter how big or small the exhibits are. Indoors or out, Bronx will make everything seem as immersive as it possibly can. And Madagascar is a perfect example. And at times it makes you forget that this is in fact an all-indoor attraction. It's divided into 5 separate zones, either based on species type, real locations, or real biomes. Yes, it does have lemurs, that's expected, but I don't know of any other Madagascar exhibit on this side of the world that has Nile crocodiles in a cave, along with the very rare ring-tailed mongooses. But a few of you probably know a big reason why this is on the list, other than the reasons I just named, is because I love to press, push, and pull interactive signage at zoos. Because I think it is the best way to learn about animals. And Madagascar has a lot of these. Number 86. The Penguin Encounter at SeaWorld San Diego. I'll often praise SeaWorld Orlando for having some of the best exhibits of their kind in the nation. Can't really say the same for San Diego, with a couple of exceptions, and the Penguin Encounter is one of them. This small slice of the Antarctic opened in 1983, and from my understanding, it revolutionized how zoos and aquariums displayed these lovable, flightless birds. Even though it screams 80s, from the look of its entrance, the signs, and the video screens, this is still one of the better penguin attractions you'll ever see. And the ultimate cherry on top, you won't find emperor penguins anywhere else in the Western Hemisphere. And they are just one of SeaWorld San Diego's 7 penguin species. Which reminds me that this isn't just a slice of the Antarctic, but Magellanic penguins have their own space just outside the entrance, and the attraction ends on the opposite side of the world, featuring birds from the Arctic. Number 85. The Nashville Zoo's Unseen New World. What I refer to as the unseen exhibit, because it's once again considered a rare gem in the zoo community. This indoor exhibit is a lot of things combined in one, a jack of all trades. It's mostly a herpetarium, along with it being an aquarium, partially a nocturnal house, insectarium, and has a walk-through aviary, featuring a lot of colorful birds and even a sloth. Other than its versatility, its hook and reasons for it making on this list is this long Amazon display, featuring large fish and even lizards. It's open-topped, and even though it's made of separate displays, it looks like one large stream. And even though the building has so much diversity, both with its animals and different types of environments, it still manages to stick to a South American theme as much as it can. Number 84. The Desert Dome at the North Carolina Zoo. One of America's 3 major desert domes, and one of 2 that are on this list. It doesn't compare in immersion and size to the one that we'll get to later, but honestly, sometimes I prefer to see the animals in North Carolina's version. I love the way that it's organized. The birds are either free-flying or on the outer rim, while reptiles are in the center. The smaller compact creatures are hidden in the crevices, and it even has a nocturnal hallway with bats, a very rarely seen mouse lemur, and at the time, sand cats, which were recently moved into the day room portion. Not to mention the hundreds of plants that are native to deserts. And it was really nice to see ocelots, not only outside, but given a decent home in general. Overall, I'd say that this is just a good example of showing that you don't need to make a massive project to create an amazing spectacle. Number 83. The Wild Arctic at SeaWorld Orlando. The first exhibit I ever visited that attempted to replicate a true natural environment. Not just by how it looks, but by how it feels. I couldn't get any confirmation on how cold it is in here. I know SeaWorld's Antarctica is 30 degrees Fahrenheit, but the Wild Arctic feels just only a little warmer. Moral of this rant, it is cold. You're placed under a blank, cloudy Arctic sky, and you're paying a quick visit to a research station where scientists are hard at work studying these animals. literally centered around a 19th century wooden sailing ship that was stranded and crushed by sea ice. You can see and hear the results of the scientists' research, and of course observe who they're studying. You're offered above and underwater views of their belugas, walruses, and last time I was there were harbor seals, which have been apparently replaced by Magellanic penguins as of last month. And, gosh, some visitor who told his friend that penguins don't live in the North Pole definitely lost an argument. And I really I pray that this is temporary. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel right to have it on this list. Number 82. The main tank in the Seas with Nemo and Friends at Epcot. You wouldn't believe the amount of Disney fans I've talked to that don't know that Disney has their own aquarium. One that's accredited by the AZA, by the way, and was at one point the largest aquarium in the world. There's a manatee rescue center, a nursery, and you can talk to Crush. But I want to talk about the main event. This expansive tank houses over 5 million gallons, spans 203 feet in diameter, and reaches a depth of 26 feet, which means you can fit Spaceship Earth in the middle of this and still have room to spare on every side. You're almost completely surrounded by 60 species of rays, sea turtles, schools and schools of tropical fish, and even a hammerhead shark. That's not all. You can make a reservation and watch all of this from your own table at the Coral Reef restaurant, or even get in line for the ride of your life alongside your favorite Finding Nemo characters, all while spending half of the journey drifting through the seafloor of this massive, awe-inspiring tank. Number 81. The Condor Ridge at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. When most people think of this place, they might think of the platypus, or the acres upon acres of savannas. My mind goes straight to the highest of the park's most guest-accessible points. Condor Ridge showcases the feathers, scales, and hooves of North America's deserts. So this is one of those exhibits where the zoo didn't have to drastically change the landscape to fit the theme. It's pretty much already a desert up here, and my skin dries up just looking at this clip. And last time I was there, I could not have asked for a better walkthrough. Everything was really active. We're talking about endangered baby bighorn sheep, an opportunity to see a species that was brought back from the brink of extinction. There's also hawks and thick-billed parrots, along with a view of the African plains that's to die for. Number 80. The aquarium at the Toledo Zoo. It's honestly getting tougher and tougher to keep writing reviews about this. I think this is the aquarium's third appearance on the channel in the last couple months, so I'll give you guys the SparkNotes version. The first thing you need to know is that it's historic. It was built during the Great Depression. And the second thing you need to know is that it was completely renovated into the modern world in 2015. Every individual habitat focuses on a different part of the world, like the Great Lakes, swamps of the South, mangrove forests, coral reefs, kelp forests, and so much more. I wouldn't say that the building is small, but I'm still amazed that they were able to feature so much variety. I always make sure to come in here and pay a visit for the eagle rays, spider crabs, flashlight fish. It wouldn't be a Toledo Zoo visit without petting something or turning this wheel that shows off the bite of a great white shark. Number 79. The Rocky Shores at the Point Defiant Zoo. When you make an exhibit that's based on the rugged shorelines of California up to Alaska, you're pretty much guaranteed to have one of the greatest collective groups of animals of all time. Everything is, to keep it simple, adorable. Puffins, seals and sea lions, sea otters, and two of the nation's very few walruses. I know that it's not a very long list, but it's really all you need to make a memorable exhibit. We kind of just covered this, so I'll just say that overall it's fun, it has educational value, and like I said on my full tour of these rocky shores, I really admire this Puffin walkthrough aviary. Not only are there not very many Arctic walkthrough exhibits, but not very many zoos care to even give puffins a decent amount of flight space. Number 78. The Rocky Coast at the North Carolina Zoo. One reason why I love this place is it has acres upon acres dedicated to this continent's beautiful landscapes and wildlife. But ironically, it's actually one of the zoo's smallest and better attractions. I saw a bunch of photos before my visit, but I still wasn't prepared for how good their polar bear complex is. I was definitely wowed and got actual chills. Well, that's mainly because of the refrigerated part of the exhibit, but still, it's excellent and possibly either the third or second best of its kind in the nation. I was also pleasantly surprised that their shorebirds actually have a decent amount of space for once. And for the first time in my life, a North American porcupine not sleeping. And even though it's a little bleak, as a lot of Arctic-themed exhibits are, the creative artwork, the interpretive displays, and the surrounding scenery definitely make up for it.
Number 77.
The Asian Savannah at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. This 150-acre field provides a vast open-range environment for some of Asia's most exotic hoofstock. It's really just that simple. The park put a fence around nature and created what is objectively one of the best habitats I'll ever see. But that's not the only reason why it's on the list. The collection is one of the rarest in the world. You can learn more about what you would find in my beginner's guide of the safari park. But I'll say for now, you can't find some of these animals anywhere else in the country. Now, the catch is, all of this is exclusive. You have to pay about $65 to at least see it. I know everyone's situations are different, but I thought it was worth the experience and I will definitely do it again. Mostly because it's not every day you get to see a cloned wild horse. Number 76. The Aviary at the Milwaukee County Zoo. The first thing I think of whenever the zoo comes up. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The reason why is because like 80% of the zoo is not good. And the aviary just looks even better in comparison. Side note, the zoo did just release their master plan and I am going to go over it one day. It really is a solid birdhouse regardless of what the rest of the zoo looks like. The aviary opened in the 60s, and even though it was renovated sometime later, you can still see remnants of the past and physically see how well it stood the test of time. It's organized by ecosystems like the subantarctic, tropical forests, savannas, coasts, and the world's islands. Number 75. The Wild Arctic at SeaWorld San Diego. Okay, you're probably wondering, why weren't the two Wild Arctic exhibits just presented together? Well, that's because they are completely different in many ways. Of course, they have plenty of similarities. It's still designed after a research base camp, and you're here to explore their findings and snoop around their living quarters. It also has both above and underwater viewings, but the layout, the design of the ship, the designs of the exhibits, and 1/3 of the species list is different. There's belugas, walruses, and last I heard, the sea otters were once again living in this exhibit. Okay, so those don't sound like reasons for San Diego's to be higher than Orlando's. Well, even though it destroys the cold immersive experience Orlando offers, this Wild Arctic gets the edge because it allows all of its animals to have outdoor access. Number 74. Mission Everglades at Zoo Miami. What does every zoo in Florida have and need? That's right, an exhibit dedicated to the state's incredible, diverse wildlife. If my zoo were to create a local wildlife exhibit, it would probably just be squirrels and white-tailed deer. But Mission Everglades gets to present several species that no other state has. And you can either experience all this from the footpath, or give a few dollars to the cause and take a fan boat ride through the Everglades and pass some incredible animals. You'll find black bears, bobcats, raccoons, and of course, you gotta have gators, foxes, and the very rare Florida panther. But Mission Everglades is really on this list because it allows you to crawl through waters that are guarded by American crocodiles. The most unique encounter that gets you right up to 70 teeth chomping right at you, and you're able to live to tell the tale. Number 73. The Monkey Trails and Forest Tales at the San Diego Zoo. Out of the 5 different sections within this larger lost forest,
This one lives up to the name the most. If you've never been here, you will get lost. It's inevitable. In fact, I can't even remember off the top of my head how I got around the monkey trails. But, that's all part of the fun. Once you step onto this boardwalk, you are raised up into the canopy to be on the same level as primates, like colobus monkeys, guenons, and mandrills. But it was also designed so you could see everything from multiple perspectives, and you have the choice to see the same animals from the ground level, along with a few others, like small reptiles, birds, and even a tropical panorama where it looks like crocodiles and pygmy hippos share the same river. Oh, and I actually just remembered. See, I got lost in my own head. If you can find it, the Monkey Trails and Forest Tales also features a boardwalk that lets you walk right over several combined exhibits, featuring a large litter of babirussas. Number 72. Myombe Reserve at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Let it be known that one of the most beautiful primate complexes can be found at a SeaWorld property. And once again, I don't think it's talked about enough. It's immersive, and it really takes you away from everything else, which is a nice change of pace from seeing animals in wonderful homes, but the illusion falls apart when a roller coaster is in the background. It's so well planted, the topography is diverse, and sometimes it just doesn't feel like a real place, and the educational elements are a chef's kiss. You can watch the primates from a distance or get within inches, which you basically can everywhere else that has apes, but Busch Gardens is still really the only place where I saw people make a connection. Number 71. The Wild Reef at the Shed Aquarium. It's definitely been a minute. I think like 4 years now since I've been to Shed, but not a week goes by without thinking of my experience here. I really can't help but agree when people say that it is the best aquarium in the nation. Just one of like 73 reasons why I would say that is because of the Wild Reef. First of all, in order to get to it, you have to take an elevator to the basement. When you reach there, that means you've been transported to the coral reefs of the Philippines. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I've seen a lot of coral reef exhibits and they can get pretty old pretty quick. The Wild Reef does things a little differently. It actually does a pretty good job making it feel like you're swimming in the ocean thanks to these coral-lined walls. And there's not one, but 2 fish nadas on the ceiling, a stingray tank that you can walk right over, and a 12-foot-high curved window providing a diver's perspective of a seemingly never-ending shark-infested waters, along with so much more that we will get to on an actual tour one day. Number 70. The Manatee Coast at the Columbus Zoo. This is one of 2 places in Ohio where you can find this ocean cattle. It's an amazing exhibit based on its quality, but it's also a rescue and rehab center for sick and injured Florida manatees, some that are permanently here and some that are temporarily here. It is technically an all-indoor exhibit, but it feels like Florida year-round, which I guess the best way you could describe that is sticky. I say technically because there is a retractable roof, allowing the animals to see and experience natural sunlight. Most manatee facilities feature fresh water, but this is all salt water. And when you do that, that means you can mix these gentle giants with much more exotic sea life, like tropical fish, stingrays, rescued sea turtles, and even rescued pelicans, creating a dynamic ecosystem that truly mirrors the manatee's natural environment. Number 69. The Teton Trek and Manatee Rescue at SeaWorld Orlando. While SeaWorld is mainly known for their entertainment side, this section shows you just a very small piece of their very large, world-renowned rescue program. The area was built and later revamped to care for sick, injured, and orphaned manatees, along with sick and injured sea turtles from multiple species. Some of them have missing limbs, and one has a missing lower part of their jaw. And on certain days, you can even kind of go behind the scenes for bittersweet moments to see manatees that got the worst of it out in the wild. At least you're still reminded that they'll receive the best care. Number 68. The Arctic Ring of Life at the Detroit Zoo. An exhibit that features life and landscapes from the top of the world. And at one point, figuratively speaking, it was on top of the world. When it opened in 2001, it didn't just raise the bar for polar bear husbandry. A lot of zoo critics called it one of the best exhibits in the world. And in many ways, it still kind of is. It covers a total of 4 acres, and is another one of those exhibits that separates you from the rest of the outside world. The polar bear habitat is based on the grassy tundra of North America's summers on one side, and the harsh wintry ice on the other. What makes this really stand out even more is the underwater tunnel. It's a little complex to explain, so I made a simple map. The sea otters, not seals anymore, unfortunately, can be seen swimming here. The polar bears can also swim right over the tunnel, so this overlap does a pretty good job at making it seem like the two are swimming in the same pool. Number 67. The Zambesi River Hippocamp at the Memphis Zoo. Arguably the best area in the zoo that doesn't have any ultra-mega theming. They kept things pretty tame and let the animals do all the talking. It is loosely based on the actual Zambesi River. It mixes life from both the deepest parts of the rainforest with life from the open wetlands and savannas. The scenery and theming are good, but what makes this a really impactful experience is you have the chance to get really close, sometimes too close for comfort, to all of its residents. Mandrills, hippos, really large crocodilians just waiting for you to somehow make it over to the other side of that glass. And even though they are famous for being reclusive and skittish, I've had luck getting the okapis to come right over to the fence line. Number 66. The Edge of Africa at Busch Gardens, Tampa. I seriously doubt that Zambesi was inspired by this, but I like to think of the two exhibits as cousins. They have very similar vibes, considering it is African safari themed, but at the same time, they're both not just some giant savanna, and you can get really close to all of its animals. But Edge of Africa is far more realistic, and it's helped by its several abandoned field research stations. It looks like some of the inhabitants can escape at any moment. And speaking of giant savannas, this is all disguised to look like it blends with the giant savanna in the background. The hippo pool is gorgeous. The porcupines are way more active than most. And you're always going to make it on a list of mine if you not just have lions and hyenas next to each other, but have them rotate in 2 exhibits. Number 65. The Ocean's Edge Wing at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. The Ocean's Edge comprises of 2 stories and 5 separate sections, including a hall dedicated to life in the Monterey Bay, a virtual cafe that warns us about the dangers of overfishing, a walk-through aviary featuring rescued shorebirds. There's plenty of touch pools to go around, along with penguins, and it's where you can find one of the aquarium's crown jewels, apparently the world's first successfully living kelp forest designed by man. It's 28 feet tall, holds more than 330,000 gallons, and it is almost impossible to walk away from a view such as this. Number 64. The Minnesota Trail at the Minnesota Zoo. I'll keep this one short because we just went over this extensively on an actual tour, but this is without question one of the greatest exhibits dedicated to local wildlife. And you know, I don't mean to knock on other zoos. Some places that have exhibits like this only stick to really basic animals that you could find in your backyard once a week. The Minnesota Trail displays animals that you might share the same neighborhood with, but you're probably never going to actually see them. There's beavers, raccoons, martens, lynxes, wolves, ferocious wolverines, and more. Number 63. The Northwest Passage at the Memphis Zoo. It's the perfect mix of fun, and it's also sentimental. There's polar bears, sea lions, a sea lion show, rescued bald eagles, and after several tries, I finally saw their raven. It's not my favorite area in the zoo, but it does have my favorite spot. An indoor space where you can walk in between swimming polar bears on one side and have sea lions on the other, creating an unbeatable place to sit and relax. While the species list is on the smaller side, the attention to detail is incredible. It highlights both the wildlife of America's Northwest, along with the First Nations that called the Pacific Northwest home. There's towering totem poles, Haida-inspired artwork, native music, and Chief Seattle's words and likeness. to remind you that this is more than just a zoo exhibit. It's also a cultural experience that really makes you stop and think. Number 62. The Great Bear Wilderness at the Brookfield Zoo. This exhibit gets a lot of hate in the zoo community, and I'll explain why to members. I kind of get it since this was built in 2010, but I don't 100% believe the hate is deserved. Great Bear Wilderness offers insights into the lives of eagles, bison, wolves, and bears. The Wolf Woods, which actually predates the rest of the area, is without a doubt the best individual enclosure in the entire zoo. They have a wonderful amount of space, a fairly active pack. The educational material definitely deserves some love, and the glass viewing is actually really cool. First of all, it's one way, so the wolves can't see us. Most viewing shelters put animals at your feet, but here, they're almost elevated to your waist. Brown and polar bears rotate around 3 different spots, and you can even walk in between their underwater panoramas. And I've been fortunate enough to see the bears swim on every visit. And then we get to the bison. The middle part of their habitat is also one of the entrance arches, so at any moment there could be a bison right above you. And to sort of reflect that, if you listen closely, you can even hear the soundbite of a stampede. Number 61. Islands at the Louisville Zoo. A groundbreaking exhibit. It opened in 1996 and 97 and is claimed to be the world's first exhibit to allow larger animals to share the same exhibit through a scheduled rotation. The pelicans and giant tortoises, along with some of the country's few blue penguins, do have their own space. But there are 3 other outdoor spaces that rotate 5 mammals from Southeast Asia. So you really never know who you're going to see and where. That's neat, but it probably wouldn't be so high on this list without the adjacent indoor Islands Pavilion. It's mostly the same theme, but with smaller animals, like tropical birds, bats, a walk-through aviary, sort of a walk-through penguin room, a newly welcomed bear cat, large reptiles, and also a day room for those rotating mammals. Number 60. The Trail of the Tiger at the Virginia Zoo. One of the best Asian wildlife collections, minus the sun bear, unfortunately. So at the time, it had great apes, great cats, lesser apes living with otters, the original panda, a baby tapir, and one of America's few black bears. Asian black bears, that is. I can best describe the exhibits as someone who just got the hang of Planet Zoo, but isn't quite ready to make the leap into building more immersive landscapes. They are standard, but they definitely get the job done. Number 59. The Open Sea Wing at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. If you take a left from the entrance, you'll meet the kelp forest. Take a right, and you'll find yourself under one of the most hypnotizing features you'll ever experience in any zoo or aquarium. This is a never-ending roundabout of approximately 7,000 sardines schooling right above you. But as amazing as this is, there's even more to this side of the aquarium. You'll then step right into the world of jellies, arguably the greatest collection of sea nettles in the world. It's truly serene, but it just keeps getting even better. Around the corner is the main open sea tank, 1.2 million gallons, 90 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 30 feet deep, meant to replicate the deep, never-ending waters of the ocean, featuring sea turtles, another tornado of schooling sardines, a hammerhead, mahi-mahi, and apparently a few of the only yellowfin tuna in human care. And if you're lucky, sometimes they even exhibit sunfish in this tank. Number 58. Safari Africa at Zoo Tampa. Even though I have to admit, once again, this one isn't as realistic, I can confidently say it's one of the ultimate African experiences. It covers so much and has almost everything you'd want and expect to find in an exhibit like this. Now, if only it had a big cat. It starts with penguins in South Africa, hoofstock from the woodlands, several giants of the savannah, birds of the wetlands, rare gems of the rainforest. And for free, you can take a trip around the entire attraction on the Expedition Africa Safari Ride and get to see species that you wouldn't see on the main footpath. The elephant complex gives the packies a good amount of space. Every time I've gone, the painted dogs are always up to something. I'll never complain about seeing pygmy hippos, river hogs, and okapis, and bay dikers all within a few steps of each other. I think we all know why Safari Africa is relatively high on this list. And it's because it's home to some of the few shoebills in the United States. Arguably the coolest bird that ever lived. Number 57. Oceans at the Indianapolis Zoo. While I don't think it's the best zoo aquarium, I would certainly say that it has the most unique collection out of all of them. When you walk inside, it welcomes you with a panoramic array of typical but still beautiful tropical fish. Then things start to get really interesting in the next room, where you'll find one of the world's largest touch tanks. Then you'll come face to face with sea lions, which you can also see outside. Then walk in between and over a colony of penguins. But things go from interesting to wild, with the only long-tailed macaques in an AZA zoo, which are technically considered an aquatic primate. Then you get to meet some of the country's few walruses and have your mind blown in the world's only dolphin dome that provides a 360-degree view of the pool and its animals around it. Number 56. Elephant Odyssey at the San Diego Zoo. Without one single doubt in my mind, the most criticized and polarizing animal project in all of zoo history. Elephant Odyssey, in a way, showcases local wildlife. It takes you back in time to see what Southern California looked like during the Ice Age. Since the San Diego Zoo hasn't figured out time travel, although it wouldn't surprise me if they did one day, they use living animals to represent or act as substitutes for their extinct cousins. Elephants are supposed to be mammoths and mastodons. Condors are teratorns. The secretary bird is a Daggett's eagle. Baird's tapir is the California tapir, and so on. Sounds like the most clever idea a zoo has ever come up with. So why is it so criticized? A lot of people will say that it just doesn't live up to the San Diego Zoo standard. There's not a lot of immersion or realism, and it's very metal fence happy. And I can agree with that. But to them, I say, if the Elephant Odyssey was in any other zoo that didn't have to worry about living up to this legendary standard, I'm pretty sure critics would say that this is one of the greatest exhibits of all time. Although, I can agree that the lion exhibit is way, way, way too small. Number 55. The Tropics Trail at the Minnesota Zoo. We've introduced domes. Now say hello to the first indoor rainforest on this list. It opened in the late 70s on the zoo's opening day and has been a guest favorite ever since. The path will lead you past tropical wildlife of Madagascar, Central Africa, Southeast Asia, Central and South America, and even the Indian Ocean. There's dragons, gibbons, tapirs, tree kangaroos, and sharks all under one roof. When I compare this to the other indoor rainforests, which we'll get to later, this one is so much more chaotic. I can't say that it's really immersive and makes you feel like you left the zoo compared to the others, but at least it does have a little more variety. It has all sorts of different kinds of habitats, and you're never really in the same elevation for long. You'll start on the ground floor and end in the canopy. Number 54. The PPG Aquarium at the Pittsburgh Zoo. For anyone planning on visiting the Pittsburgh Zoo, the aquarium is their peak, and it's not even up for debate. This view right here is the best part in the zoo, and one of the best spots to stand at any zoo. This aquarium covers rivers and streams with open-top displays. That's something that I've always admired about it. It features penguins from the sub-Antarctic, a kelp forest placed in a semi-tunnel whose surface is hit with crashing waves. You'll find yourself marveling at a coral reef that expands both the bottom and top floor, and you hope to get lost in the loop that immerses you in a tropical Amazon forest, home to river rays, piranhas, and river monsters that was actually once home to the last river dolphin in the United States. Number 53. World of Birds at the Bronx Zoo. I regretfully didn't film a lot of this, so I'll be quick, but in my defense, half of it was closed. My reasons for loving this are the same as why I love Madagascar. Here you'll find even more examples of the Bronx Zoo's ability to perfectly replicate nature, even in a small indoor setting. Off the top of my head, I actually remember the details of the exhibits more than I remember the actual living birds, including this tree that comes with a conservation message, by the way. And I remember one of the exhibits being completely barrierless at our feet. Now there's a reason why zoo enthusiasts call this the greatest birdhouse in America. And even though I only saw half of it, I honestly have to agree. Number 52. Wildlife Explorers Base Camp at the San Diego Zoo. This place has a reputation for creating new standards over the last 100 years or so, and some zoos just don't have the resources to catch up. I never thought I'd see the day when they or any zoo made a new standard for children's zoos. You hear children's zoo, you might think of a playground or a petting zoo. Well, at least I do. But wow, I don't know where to begin with this one, or how to describe this and do it justice. There's not one, but 2 floors worth of invertebrates, including a multi-leveled leaf-cutter ant tree. There's 2 levels of herpetariums, featuring huge lungfish and a giant salamander. There's a hummingbird room, if you want to count that as part of the base camp, because I definitely do. And you can walk on a spider web and play right next to a lively group of squirrel monkeys. I know you shouldn't encourage your viewers to stop watching your video, but in case you do want to see how unique this exhibit is, there's your gateway in the corner. Number 51. The Teton Trek at the Memphis Zoo. It's like stepping into the Grand Teton in the Yellowstone ecosystem, and I can proudly say that I've been there. So this exhibit really took me back. The vast landscapes, the waterfalls, and the animals brought up some wonderful memories. There's grizzly bears, timber wolves, beautiful waterfowl, and a herd of elk. That's a group of species that I would pay every day just to see. But I would pay even more to experience the ambience. There's not a lot of zoos that offer views like this. The entrance plaza features, well, in reality, a splash pad, but these water jets represent explosive geysers, including the famous Old Faithful. But the highlight for me is the Great Lodge, modeled after the real Old Faithful Inn in Yellowstone. Not only can it be used as an event center, but if there are no private events, it's open for everyone to enjoy, and you can even watch the bears and the wolves from the second-story balcony. And then we have number 50, Russia's Grizzly Coast at the Minnesota Zoo. Apparently the first of its kind exhibit. Reportedly, no other zoo in the nation had an exhibit that was themed after Russia's diverse terrain and wildlife. This award-winning attraction does its best at transporting you to the rocky coasts, the volcanic fields, and dense forests of the Russian Far East. I can't really think of many exhibits that have washed-up whale bones, an unburied mammoth, lava tube, geysers, and a bubbling mud pit all in one place. Oh, and the animals are pretty cool too, I guess. You got sea otters, grizzly bears, endangered leopards, and a Hungarian breed of pig, which replaced the recently phased out European wild boars. So Russia's Grizzly Coast follows the rule of less is more, and it actually has the least amount of species of any major zone in the zoo. It's more than often considered its finest feature. And that, bulls and cows, was part 1 of my top 100 favorite zoo exhibits list. Let me know in the comments what you think the top 10 will be. Maybe even leave your own top 10 list of favorite exhibits, and let me know if you agree or disagree with my selections. But again, just remember, this is based on my humble opinions. So stay tuned for part 2, and thank you all for watching.